Hello everyone, it's Rosin, and I thought I'd record a little video just talking about my thoughts after seeing Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway, which recently came out in Japan, and like other Gundam productions that have happened in the past, they were actually selling a limited edition Blu-ray right there at the theater with multilingual subs and everything, so that made it easy for people like me who don't live in Japan to gain access to it. So as soon as it was up, if you know what I mean, I was able to sit down and watch it, and I was excited. This is a movie I've been looking forward to ever since they announced it, and it was really good. I'm really happy I sat down and watched it. And in general, I just thought I'd talk about it because I think at this point I'm kind of known by many people as a Gundam guy online, so I'm sure that a lot of people just kind of wanted to know what my thoughts were about it in general. And also just I don't know. It seems like this movie has been gaining, honestly, more attention than I thought it would from more of an outside perspective, outside audience, however you want to say it. It did pretty well, box office-wise, it seems like, even in comparison to some more recent Gundam theatrical stuff that's come out. And also, too, it just seems like this is kind of the big anime blockbuster thing right now that people kind of have their eyes on, and a lot of people outside of that online Gundam sphere seem to be noticing it and going, oh, hey, I kind of want to watch that. That looks really cool. Which I have to say, by the way, do not watch this if this is your first Gundam thing. This is the sequel to a movie that served as the finale for the original story arc of Gundam. So I have to say, I'll probably make a longer video and stuff talking about my overall thoughts on Gundam, and I have a lot of shit to say about Gundam that I feel like I could make into channel content that I just haven't ever bothered to do, but I've been feeling that passion in me, wanting me to talk more about Gundam on here. But for now, to make it short and easy, if you want to watch this and you have no idea anything about Gundam, what you need to know is you should probably watch the original Mobile Suit Gundam TV series first. You can also watch the film trilogy compilation. In my opinion, even though it's a little bit better animated, it's not as good as the story. I recommend maybe checking out the TV series. Then after that, watch its sequel, Zeta Gundam. Again, watch the TV series. There's a compilation movie trilogy, but it's kind of bad. Don't watch it. Then watch Double Zeta, which is just a TV series. There's no compilation movie trilogy for that. And then you can watch Char's Counterattack, which is a movie, which is supposed to be the end of that initial storyline of Gundam. It's where everything wraps. And then this movie is the first in a trilogy that is supposed to be the sequel to Char's Counterattack and kind of follows up on a character from that, Hathaway. So Hathaway's Flash is a very interesting movie to talk about in terms of just Gundam history, because it's actually a novel that was originally written, and actually I should say it's a novel trilogy that's being adapted into a trilogy of films. I'm assuming they're doing one film per volume. But the original book was originally released, from February 1989 to April of 1990, so 89 to 90, that novel trilogy came out. So it's been, 3 decades plus of a wait for this to get an adaptation. I kind of think no one really thought it ever would, in part because Hathaway's Flash, the novel, kind of takes place in an alternate canon in a way. Because there was a novelization of a rejected film script that Tomino, the creator of Gundam, wrote for Char's Counterattack, and then Hathaway's Flash was a sequel to that, which kind of put it in a weird spot in terms of continuity, even though that there were some there's been other Gundam stuff made that kind of has some kind of nods and references to Hathaway's Flash, or at least stuff from Hathaway's Flash. Like Unicorn had a mobile suit that originated in Hathaway's Flash show up, kind of as a little Easter egg type thing. Cute little reference. So then they went out a few years back and said, that's it, we're going to make it work, even though the novel trilogy is kind of in a weird outside spot in terms of canon. We're just going to adjust what we need to adjust and just make it a full-fledged sequel to the theatrical Char's Counterattack. And I have to say, I had a really good time. I thought this was a good movie, maybe a great movie even. Maybe not phenomenal, that might be going too far, but in terms of personal enjoyment, I had a really great time. I thought this was a fun ride throughout, and this may not be my favorite Gundam entry in the world. I think that if the rest of this trilogy pulls through in terms of this level of style and quality, I definitely think this could creak into my top 10. It was definitely a fun time. So this movie follows Hathaway Noah, who is the son of major Gundam figure and Earth Federation Captain Bright Noah, And Hathaway has always been a side character in previous Gundam entries. He had more of a pivotal role in Char's counterattack as part of a subplot in that movie. And this movie finally brings him into the forefront as the central figure of his own story, the protagonist. And it follows him as an adult after he has ruminated, and basically follows him after the events of previous Gundam works have molded him into becoming what is essentially the leader of a terrorist organization that targets the Earth Federation government and tries to assassinate its highest-ranking officials because they're doing nothing about preserving Earth. They keep passing legislation that just oppresses the people both in space and the impoverished people still remaining on Earth. They formed this wasn't recent. As far back as Char's counterattack, you can see this. They have a law enforcement group called the Manhunters that basically go around and harass impoverished commoners and stuff to check for ID. And then forcefully, violently deport people. And we get to see them hassling crowds, and we actually do get a fair chunk of time hearing the public's opinion on MAFTI and their operations in this movie, which I liked a lot. And a lot of this stuff is actually very faithful to the original novel, which is available in English. Zeonic Scanlations put up a fan translation of it. Not too long ago they completed that, so if you ever want to go back through and actually read it, if you're interested in the source material, you can do so, which is pretty cool. And I will say the one thing in the adaptation that I think I maybe didn't agree with as much, or I kind of was a little bit bummed out by, there is a sequence where you do get to see in both the novel series and in this first movie here, the Manhunters just harassing a bunch of people on the street while Hathaway and friends kind of watch. And it felt a little more visceral and violent in the book, and I feel like they got the point across enough in the movie. Like, there's literally a guy who just fires a machine gun into the air above a crowd of people, not giving a fuck if he hits anyone, as an intimidation tactic. So you definitely get the idea and the just the brutality of these people, but it's a little bit more personal in the original novel, and it does result in a stupid car chase that doesn't really work with the story, and I felt like Tomino maybe wrote in just to have an action scene for the sake of it. I'm kind of happy they cut out the car chase, because that always didn't sit right with me in that book, but I thought they could have done maybe a little bit more to focus on that state violence and just showcase the oppression that the people of the city of Davao have been subject to because of the Manhunters, and we can extrapolate that to this is happening all throughout the world, and people are just fed up with it. So, but other than that, I thought the overall adaptation work was really nicely done. I noticed that they had condensed or combined certain scenes in some cases, and I think that just made the story flow better. They managed to do that without cutting out any of the characterization or plot. And I thought that was overall a pretty good choice, all things considered. I feel like this is just the cleaner version of the Hathaway story. Compared to the novel, it flows better. And actually, in general, I think this movie has really phenomenal pacing. And I can't believe I'm saying that about a Gundam movie, because usually that's one of their weaker points. And almost every time you go to see a Gundam movie, I personally feel like, damn, I wish this was just an episodic, more elongated thing instead. I feel like the Gundam story format, or Gundam stories tend to suffer in the movie format because they don't have full time to breathe and explain themselves. But this movie did a pretty good job of just flowing eloquently and moving from scene to scene and plot beat to plot beat in a way that felt natural, easy to follow, and just really engaging. Compared to the awkward stops and starts that you get with compilation Gundam stuff, or even the original Gundam movies, where it feels like a lot of stuff had to get cut, and sometimes it's missing the connective tissue of certain story elements. But no, I definitely think that this did a pretty good job of adapting the novel. Like I said, I think that car chase was cut for good reason. The characters, I think, were really fleshed out here. Well, maybe not fleshed out, but brought to life in animated form, and they all have such great designs. The old Hathaway's Flash designs that appeared in games and in illustrations for the books and all that were just kind of whatever. But shoutouts to Pablo Uchida, who just really did a great job redesigning all of these characters and just making them look incredible. Really, really happy with everyone's design and just overall look. Just the aesthetics of this movie are great. It's just enjoyable to look at. Even though the mecha are depicted in CGI, which is something I'm usually not that big of a fan of, we still get a good bit of hand-drawn animation for the mechs here and there. That's just a treat every time it happens, even though sometimes, especially during the final fight, usually when the mechs become hand-drawn, it's for still action shots. And when they're moving around, they're mostly CG. Even then, I thought the CG looked pretty good for what it was. I got used to it pretty fast, and I was engaged with the action of this movie. And honestly, actually, I think the movie does a really good job of starting as a political thriller. Almost it feels a little bit like a James Bond movie right off the start. And just having that political thriller feel to it as you're watching Hathaway try to work through his situation while balancing that he's kind of living a double identity and trying to get in touch with his terrorist friends and all that stuff, while also having to deal with an incident that happens early on in the story. I'm trying to avoid spoilers as much as I can. That kind of results in him having to go through a bunch of law enforcement bureaucracy bullshit with the Earth Federation government, and just watching him trying to balance these two things is a fun point of tension, and it is just a really good time. And then as the movie goes on and more of the mobile suit action starts to take place, it almost transitions into being more of like a disaster flick, even more so than a war story in some cases, because we really get street level view of all of the mobile suit violence in a way that really was reminiscent to me of Gundam F91, which I really appreciated. Specifically that opening like quarter of F91, where we just get to see from a civilian perspective the brutality of mobile suit battles in an urban environment. If you appreciated that part of F91, which I know a lot of Gundam fans really love that opening part of F91. I love F91 as a whole. I know that kind of makes me weird, but most people agree the start of F91 is pretty cool. If you liked that, you're going to love this. It does such a great job of making the mobile suits terrifying, which is when I think they're always at their best. Just depicting them as weapons of mass destruction and just the horrific consequences that they have for everyone who gets caught in the middle. And just the action scenes do a good job of communicating things too, which I don't want to get too much into details, but I mean, this is kind of a thing that I guess isn't the most apparent thing in the world, but when the Mafty mobile suits and the Earth Federation are fighting above the city, like a character kind of makes a kind of quip about the fact that like the Earth Federation forces are firing and they just don't seem to give a shit about the fact that they're also hitting buildings in the city too and causing much more destruction than what is probably needed to fend off the Messer units that are attacking. And just stuff like that is stuff I always appreciate in Gundam when it takes the time to depict that stuff. And in general too, one thing I was really happy about is that they were faithful to the way that I feel like Tomino wrote these books, in the sense that they didn't feel the need to shoehorn in more mobile suit action than what was originally in the books. Tomino has always struck me as someone who made the series the way he did when he originally directed Gundam stuff, because he was part of a team and there was expectations in terms of an audience and what the studio wanted, and you know, there's a lot of complicating factors, and it's a huge group effort to make a thing, which resulted in stuff like every episode in those original Gundam shows, there's basically a mobile suit battle taking place. You see a little bit of action, but if you go on and read Tomino's stuff, you start to notice that he actually likes to make the mobile suit battle sequences in his personal work a little more infrequent, which actually I think does a great job of making them hit more powerfully when they're actually depicted, compared to stuff like the original Gundam series and Zeta and Double Zeta and all that, where sometimes you can start to feel a little bit numb to it because you're seeing it so often. Every episode you tune into, you can expect to see more robots fighting. But if you go back and read the original Gundam trilogy, even what I've read of the other novelizations he's done for Gundam stuff, like I remember reading somewhere that apparently in that F91 novelization, like, the main character doesn't even pilot the Gundam till the very final battle, which seems interesting. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's just something I kind of read from a synopsis of it. But yeah, Tomino seems a lot less interested in having these constant battles and more seems more interested in mobile suits as for what they can tell us about the world, what these characters are involved in terms of a conflict of ideologies, and really wants to use them sparingly so they don't lose their weight and the terror behind them. And I think this movie did a good job of keeping true to that. It never made it feel like the mobile suits were mundane. It always made them feel horrifying. When they're on screen, you're paying attention because it gets scary. And you're terrified for the destruction they're causing and stuff like that. So I hope that the rest of the trilogy manages to keep that energy, and they kind of keep to that, because it made for something that definitely in terms of animated Gundam stuff felt a little more unique, and just letting characters and situations breathe a little bit more in a way that I just really appreciated overall. So yeah, I think that's about all I have to say for Gundam Hathaway. I really liked it. If you're a Gundam fan, I think you owe it to yourself to check this out, as long as you've kind of seen everything that builds up to this. I would never recommend this to a newcomer to Gundam. I have seen some people be like, oh, you can just watch Char's Counterattack and watch this, but please don't watch Char's Counterattack as your first Gundam thing either, because that is literally like the final chapter of a multi-part story, and yeah, you should just go through and watch Gundam and Zeta Gundam, Double Zeta, Char's Counterattack, then watch this if you want. But I'm really curious to see what the second and third movies of this trilogy end up being like, and I hope if you saw this, you enjoyed it too, because I just had a really good time overall. So thanks a lot. I am going to head out for now. Have a good one, everyone. See ya.